in their budget proposals for Scotland or for the United Kingdom, despite all the talk that they are going to end austerity. But the Labour Party, Ed Balls, Jim Murphy, have announced £800 million extra, not through borrowing, but through money that will be spent by the banker's bonus tax, by the mansion tax, by changes in pension fund tax relief, all money we are prepared to raise, the rise in the top rate of tax, because it was a sin that the Conservatives were telling people that we were all in this together, cutting welfare benefits, imposing the bedroom tax, and then giving a huge tax cut to millionaires, and that is what is going to be reversed. So £800 million from the Labour Party to get us out of austerity, money to be spent in Scotland in the first few months of a Labour government, properly funded, as against nothing from the Scottish National Party. Now, what sort of message are they sending out? And why are they doing this? Do you know what John Swinney said a few months ago when he was asked why the Scottish National Party had done nothing to end the bedroom tax? And remember, they had to be pushed by Kezia and Jane Baxter, who's here, and Alec Rowley and Claire and others to do anything to mitigate the effects of the bedroom tax. I saw it at first hand. A lady in Cowdenbeath in my constituency. I went to see her because her husband had just died. She had had an extra room in the house because he needed equipment for kidney dialysis. He had now died. She immediately got a demand that she had an extra room, and she either had to pay £12 a week more, or taken off her housing benefit, or she was going to have to leave her house. That's what the bedroom tax was doing. And so the Labour Party determined to abolish the bedroom tax. But what did John Swinney say? When he was asked why would he not take action to deliver us from the bedroom tax, where the Scottish Government had money to do so, he said, if we took action, it would let Westminster off the hook. So thousands of people were to be left on the hook because he was not prepared to take action to let Westminster off the hook. He wanted to prove not that Westminster could work, but that Westminster couldn't work. He put the argument for independence before the immediate need to relieve poverty. He wasn't so much interested in ending the bedroom tax as in exploiting the bedroom tax. And we've got to recognise that we get up in the morning wanting to deliver people from social injustice, and they get up in the morning with different priorities to achieve independence. And look at youth unemployment. Do people know that there are 29,000 young people in Scotland who are under 19 who are out of work? Not in training, not in employment, not in education. When we came into power in 1997, remember, we taxed the utilities and raised money from the gas and electricity companies to pay for £5 billion that we put into getting young people into work. And we need a new deal now because there are so many young people out of work. 29,000 under 19, 59,000 under 25. Figures that are worse now in terms of the improvement than in Wales or in England. And yet nothing is being done. And I keep repeating, we've had an SNP government in power for 8 years, and we've had a Conservative government in power for 5 years, and we have not seen the improvement we need in youth unemployment. And this is a wasted generation. And it's made worse by huge cuts in college places. And Fife College, right across the county, you've seen people taken out of college places as the numbers have been cut by a third of the last few years. So we've got to take action on this. And I tell you, Jim Murphy has said, we will use the proceeds of the banker's bonus tax, and that will create jobs for young people, training opportunities, apprenticeships, modelled on what Fife Council has itself done with 1,000 apprentices already employed in Fife to try to deal with the problems of youth unemployment. So I ask you again, who has the best policy when it comes down to dealing with a social problem in our midst? Is it the SNP, who have done little about youth unemployment? It's certainly not the Conservatives. It is surely the Labour Party with a plan to give priority to those people who are out of work. And then take the National Health Service. And you've got to ask yourself again, who has the best policies on the National Health Service? And who do you trust? Is it the party that created the National Health Service? We knew in the 1930s that nurses were having to lead the beds of patients to run charity flag days to raise funds for healthcare. And so we created a free universal national health service in 1948 against the opposition, And as Jim Murphy said the other day, nationalism did not create the National Health Service, it was a Labour government. And then in 1997, when we came in, the National Health Service was dying on its feet, and we had to take action. And we raised taxes, the National Insurance, not very popular with some people, because we knew we had to fund the National Health Service for the future. And we doubled the money spent on the health service. We had 100,000 new nurses, 30,000 new doctors, and we built new hospitals, and we built promises that you would have less time in accident and emergency, promises also that waiting times would come down, promises that cancer patients would get the best treatment. Now, what has happened over the last 4 years? There is a call for a review of the National Health Service in Fife, because despite the brilliant efforts of doctors and nurses and all the staff who work in the health service, we are 40 consultants short in Kirkcaldy and Victoria Hospital. Community care, the ability to get older people cared for in the community. Bed blocking happening in hospitals because we don't have enough community care places. Services like mental health, but also services like accident and emergency, under pressure every day. The amount of money being spent on the National Health Service in Scotland, I tell you, has gone down in real terms, after you take account of inflation, by 1% over the last 4 years. While it's even risen in England, despite the fact that it's not risen enough to meet the population and demographic requirements and the technological needs of a rising health service demand. And so who do you trust on the health service? Those people who believed in the health service were prepared to take action, even if it was unpopular, to raise cash for the National Health Service, against those people, the Scottish National Party, who've been running the health service in Scotland, and now we find the health service is underfinanced, under-resourced, but they've not had the guts or the ability to come to the Scottish people and say, we need more money for the National Health Service and we'll take difficult decisions too. So take all these issues that are social justice concerns, food banks and poverty, austerity itself, youth unemployment, the National Health Service's neglect, and ask yourself at this election, who has the best policies for dealing with social justice? And I believe that everybody who looks at this seriously will conclude that you need to elect Labour members of Parliament to ensure that the social justice agenda is advanced. So then ask yourself this question. Why, when there are all these great social justice concerns, why every time you pick up the newspapers, and I've got friends from the press here, and why, when you look at the media, the only thing they're talking about is something else? They're talking about coalitions and deals and pacts. Why is this happening? Can I just explain what I think is going on? The Conservative Party know they can't fight this election on the record because living standards have been falling. The health service is under pressure. Other public services are in difficulty. Austerity has not worked. So they originally, as you know, wanted a referendum on Ed Miliband. That was what they wanted to do. Posters about Ed Miliband all over the place and saying that they couldn't have him as a Prime Minister. But he has proved that he is a man of principle and integrity. And I believe he has shown in the television debates and also in the speeches he's made that he is the right person to be the next Prime Minister of this country. So, what do the Conservatives do? They don't want a referendum on the NHS. They don't want it to be a choice about who does best on living standards. They haven't managed to make it a referendum on Ed Miliband. So they've hit on this new trick. They'll make it a referendum on whether people want a Labour government that is controlled from Scotland by the Scottish National Party. And that's why you're seeing all these posters up in England, not in Scotland, these posters up in England of Ed Miliband in the pocket of Alex Salmond, or Ed Miliband, a puppet on a string that's being pulled by Nicola Sturgeon. The Conservatives are trying to show that the Labour Party would be in power but controlled by the SNP. But there is no deal. There is no coalition pact. There is never going to be an arrangement between the Labour Party and the SNP. How, after all, could you have an arrangement with a party that wants to break up the country that you want to build up? How can you have an arrangement with a party that doesn't share the same priorities that you have for social justice? There is no chance of a deal between the Labour Party and the Scottish National Party. So how do the Conservatives keep this issue going? Their friends in the press talk about it all the time. they whip up feeling in England. And what has happened is that the Conservative Party have retreated to the most base tactic imaginable. Instead of defending, as they should, the unity of the United Kingdom and the common interest between Scotland, England, Wales and Northern Ireland, instead of defending the principle of sharing that makes it possible for us to allocate resources across the whole of the United Kingdom, depending on those who are in need, they have retreated into becoming the party of English nationalism against Scottish nationalism. And that is what they are trying to do. So you've had English votes for English laws, their new policy, that English MPs will have different rights from Scottish MPs in the House of Commons. You have the Carlisle principle that they announced only a few days ago, that every year there'd be a report on whether the Scottish Parliament was overstating its powers. You then have not just the posters, but you have the Conservatives were the people who advocated the debates where the Scottish National Party was present, because they wanted to get the Scottish National Party boosted in Scotland at the expense of the Labour Party. And tomorrow the Conservative Party, for the first time ever, are issuing an English manifesto. So the purpose of this is nothing to do with what the truth is, because there is no deal, no pact, no coalition. Ed Miliband's made it absolutely clear between Labour and the SNP. The purpose of this is to whip up anti-Scottish feeling in England, to bolster their vote against UKIP in England, to make the SNP seem more important in Scotland, to stop it being a referendum on living standards and the NHS, and to try to wrong-foot the Labour Party. And that's why you're reading in the press every day that there's supposed to be a pact between the Labour Party and the SNP, which is not only fictional, it will never, never happen. And we